Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is my good friend, esteemed colleague, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party, as well as the County Chair of the Suffolk Republican Party. And joining us today is a wonderful, wonderful guest we've had on before, Colonel Tony Shaffer, one of the great intelligence officers in the history of the United States. We were lucky to have him serving and working for our country. He now runs the London Institute, which is a think tank for public policy involving foreign affairs and national security. Tony, we're very happy to have you back. Jesse and I just think you're absolutely just the best. So,
well, thank you, Richard. It's always great to be here. And since the congressional record reflects exactly what you said, I will have to accept your comment.
That's right. And Jesse, with the powers vested in him by the state party and the county party, is going to give you a special chairman's certificate as well. Let the record.
It's going to be emailed to your LinkedIn address. Don't worry about it, Tony. Great to have you, sir.
Good to be here, Jesse.
So let's start the show off with foreign policy and national security issues. Let's begin with the Russian war against the Ukraine. There have been some recent developments which I find very troubling, gentlemen. For example, you pick up the papers and you turn on the radio and television and you hear that Putin and the leaders of North Korea are getting together for a swap of military information, technology, weapons, food. So it's building up and strengthening the axis of evil. And there was a lead editorial in today's Wall Street Journal that made the point to me very clear, Tony, that if Ukraine does not win and they lose the war against this war aggression by the Russians against them, that the axis of evil is only going to get stronger and the threats to world peace, Western civilization, United States is at greater risk. I want your thoughts about recent developments and what you see is happening.
So I'm not against our involvement in conflicts, Richard. I'm against our involvement where we're not going to win. And the way the Biden administration has executed their strategy has failed. I mean, that's the problem. That's the bottom line. Blinken today, at the time we're taping this, has announced another $1 billion of support. At the very same time, Richard, they're firing, Zelensky's firing all these people for corruption. So really, you're pouring more gasoline onto an already burning fire that's not burning in our favor. So I agree with your premise. The problem is we don't have an administration who understands the premise and can act on it. That's the problem. So as much as I recognize the potential danger of aggressors being successful, our strategy to counter it has not worked. And there's a number of reasons we could go into on that.
Well, let's focus on that, Tony.
Yeah.
Why have we not been engaged in a successful policy?
For two reasons. It's been run by politicians. Victoria Nuland's not a strategist. The guys at the White House, Jake Sullivan, he's not a military guy. You need a Norman Schwarzkopf who could come in, organize, help determine the equipping standards, and most importantly, setting up a series of training programs and operational exercises which allow for a cohesion of military forces. That didn't happen. Instead, what I call it, woke goes to war. They sent all the Ukrainians out to all the different NATO nations. Think about this. You can't get states in the United States to agree on standards. Think about this expanded over multiple nations with multiple standards, with no clear understanding of how to create cohesion in a larger military force that had to be effective against one of the most effective forces on the planet, Russia. Russia has no such problems. They are very cohesive. while they are ham-handed, they're very consistent. The consistency necessary to achieve military victory is lacking on the Ukrainian side. It's haphazard. There's reports from the battlefield of losing Leopard 2s. These are hugely effective when they're used properly, but the way they've been doing it, they lead with small forces of infantry and Bradleys that get blown up. And then as a secondary thought, they bring in the tanks. It's the other way around. It should be the other way around. You lead with tanks. You have an effective armor force that punches through, gains the access to past the barriers, and then you bring in infantry. So, supposedly Mark Milley's advising them. If so, he's advising them badly. And this is my concern. Apparently, we don't have the best and brightest advising the Ukrainians to effectively put together what they have. And again, the idea of training everybody all over the larger ranch of NATO, all over the place, is not creating units which are effective in going and achieving military effectiveness and unit cohesion on the battlefield. So that's why we're losing. It is what it is. And
is that your opinion, Tony, that Ukrainians are losing?
Richard, they have 3 weeks max left to achieve some level of sustainable military victory. That is to say, they've stated a number of objectives: retake Bakhmut, head for Crimea. They've done none of that. They have zero permanent wins on the current battle. That's it. I mean, I'm not pro-Putin. As a matter of fact, Richard, I haven't told you this before, but we're constantly being attacked in cyberspace by the Russians because of my calling Putin a thug. So please do not take my words as pro-Russian. My words are simply criticizing the Biden administration and NATO for having not been effective in establishing cohesive military units with a clear military strategy that could be effective on the battle space. And now we're down to 3 weeks before rainy season comes in. Imagine, if you will, Burning Man with tanks. That's what you're going to see here in about 3 weeks, and without the hot chicks. Just saying. And so that's the reality which we're facing. So it comes at a time we have to rethink how the Ukrainians are being advised, and frankly, just think about who's in charge. The Biden administration, everything it touches goes the other way. And I think I lay this at bad leadership with an over-reliance on political concepts rather than tried and true military strategies, which have always worked. And that's why we're here where we're at.
Jesse, what do you say?
Tony, great to have you. And the picture you paint is bleak, but I mean, based on your history and your experience, certainly you have, the contacts and the experience to determine what's going on there. Absent it, with the fact that we have strong career military leadership within the Pentagon and within at the Biden administration's disposal, what would be an effective tack at this point to change that 3-week problem, to change the problems that Ukraine is facing now? Because what I see is that the Biden administration, the way they bungled this issue, and the way they bungled, domestic issues like Maui, it's going to be difficult. The political will is going to be difficult, and he's mounted this political difficulty to come about to try and get this $1 billion aid package to Ukraine even passed through Congress, because laymen and people are right to ask, well, you ignored Maui, you ignored this American tragedy, this natural disaster. What's this? Why are we sending money there when we should take it here? And
well, that's an excellent question.
Huh?
No, it's an excellent question, Jesse. I mean, let me kind of jump into that. So, yeah. So first off, Biden has a fundamental disrespect for the military. That was exhibited yesterday when he provided a Vietnam veteran who earned the Medal of Honor. He literally walked out of the ceremony. So you start that with the fundamental basis of his attitude, and then you go from there. And, yeah, the Maui thing is problematic. I mean, to me, my policy would have been $10,000 per family just to get them back on their feet, especially in light of the massive amount of spending we're doing in Ukraine. It's immensely disrespectful. And think about this, that's a blue state. Hawaii is deep blue. So it's their own constituents that they're hurting. But going back to Ukraine, Jesse, there's no doubt military officers many of which I know personally, who could have planned this out, established a clear path forward with achievable objectives that would have put the Russians back on their heels, no doubt. I don't want to say names. I don't want to get them in trouble. But I'm telling you, it's a matter of, you spoke of political will. The political will of the Biden administration is to select officers who are politically reliable, people like Mark Milley, who's about to retire, by the way. And, I guess Mark will go off and maybe get a job as a model showing his legs in high heels and skirts or something, since he wants to exhibit all this white rage. But I'm just telling you that Mark was not the guy to do the strategy. There are 4-star generals, some in service, some retired, who could have come back. Remember, they brought Pete Schoonmaker, General Schoonmaker, back from retirement to have him lead the initial days of the war on terror back in 2001, 2002. So it's not a lack of competent military leaders. It's a lack of political will to bring the folks in who are absolutely qualified to do it. And the result is what we're observing right now, is this kind of haphazard, let's throw money at it and hope for the best. Hope is not a strategy.
Tony,
But how do we get that? Let me just interrupt for a moment.
Go ahead.
But his experts have failed on the battlefield in the coordination of a military response with NATO and Ukraine. And we were slow in the draw to get into Ukraine. We've had natural disasters, and now there's questions within the Congress, on both sides of the aisle, that of the spending of these aid packages, right? So, and let me just go on record, we need to defend, we need to assist Ukraine to stop that Russian bear from moving forward. But how does the administration deal with the military dilemma that they've created, plus compounding it with the political domestic situation here? Is there a way to get through that dilemma? And is it like, putting a thread through a needle, or is it, is it passable?
At this point, it's going to require major surgery. And let me give you an example that I was directly involved in. If you recall, ISIS was eating our lunch under the Obama administration.
Yes.
The Obama administration was never able to focus. Yet the moment that Trump was elected, a guy named Joe Dunford, General Joseph Dunford, a friend of mine, I advised him, was basically told, go win. So he did. He put together the buy with and through strategy, which, by the way, there's a series that I helped produce called Chain of Command by Nat Geo. This is mainstream media. This is not left. This is not conservative media. This is mainstream media. It shows how Dunford's strategy was able to defeat ISIS in 10 months. So, Jesse, it's the issue of people make policy. The people you pick are the ones who execute policy. The policy right now is simply not adequately structured to achieve victory. And so what you have to have now is major surgery within the constructs of the national security infrastructure at the top. By the way, Dunford was picked by Obama to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. He was held back from doing what he felt he could do or should do, and I've heard this directly from in meetings that prevented Dunford from doing the things necessary to win. When Trump came in, he removed all the barriers and let the military do its job. And I think that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing Victoria Nuland, Tony Blinken from state interfering constantly in military affairs, which they really have no business being involved in. That would be the first thing I would do. Get the State Department out of the war. They're not war fighters. They shouldn't be involved in this. And I think that is added to the complexity and, frankly, the inefficiency of our military support to Ukraine.
I think gentlemen, I think the Biden administration has been tepid all along. I mean, Biden famously said a minor incursion is not a big deal,
right?
Which invited them to go in.
Exactly.
That was a green light. They've been slow in getting all the military equipment that they needed in terms of long-range artillery. They've told them don't go into Russia and make any attacks in Russia. They haven't given them the planes they needed. They've been very, very slow on all the equipment that was necessary. I really believe that it's not that they don't want a victory. They're afraid of a victory for Ukraine. Okay? It's not that they just don't want to deal with the reality that if Ukraine beats Russia, there may be other problems. And I'm concerned that they'll have bigger problems if Russia eats up Ukraine that then becomes an impetus for the Chinese to say, well, the West couldn't stop the Russians, and we're far, far better than the Russians. We'll just go into Taiwan. What do you say, Tony?
Well, I agree with your premise, Richard. That's the issue, is that right now, if this offensive fails, Ukraine has basically used up all of its resources. Zelensky's now talking about another 300,000-man call-up. And the best that those folks can do is essentially set up defensive lines, because the initiative's going to return to Russia. And Russia's going to be the ones who may have to, they will have the option of going on the offensive. And that underscores your point. The fundamental weakness that the Biden administration has demonstrated is indeed encouraging the potential for China to be more aggressive. And they've exercised around Taiwan. They've actually been doing air incursions into their airspace. Just recently, thank goodness, Congress did authorize $80 billion of sales. Remember, this is sales, not us giving weapons to the Taiwanese. And it's long overdue. We are now finally stepping up and trying to give the Taiwanese what they want to be able to defend themselves. So I do believe our focus at this point should be on Taiwan. Two reasons. First, Taiwan is an interlocutor in our economy. They provide not only to us but to the world a series of microchips which go in virtually, I think, something like 89% of the global vehicles. We lose that. That's a huge blow to our economy no matter how you cut it. Secondly, they're a democracy, for goodness sake. They're actually trying to do the things we would encourage any democracy to do. And I think like we did with Lend-Lease and other things we did running up to World War II, we should do that. And we need to focus on deterring China. And again, to your point, Richard, if we're not doing things properly in Ukraine, the Chinese could well take that as a signal that the Biden administration is weak. They will do a tepid, if any, response at all to Taiwan. And it almost encourages President Xi to actually consider taking military action. And the other thing that has not been talked about greatly is the fact that in January of next year, 24, is the Taiwanese presidential elections. It would be that time during that period that I think the maximum danger is going to happen, because the Taiwanese will be in chaos because of their elections. And again, if the Chinese interpret the Biden failure to do what's necessary to defend Ukraine as a signal, they could well decide to do something militarily shortly thereafter.
All right. Kevin, just give us a signal for a break. Tony, can you stay with us for another segment?
Absolutely. All
right, this is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Our guest is Colonel Tony Shaffer, a world-renowned intelligence leader, a great military man, greatly respected and greatly honored throughout the country and the world. We'll be taking a break. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back for more interesting conversation.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
That moment when you realize your skincare is actually working. That's Rodan & Fields, the #1 female dermatologist-founded skincare brand in the U.S. Designed by 2 dermatologists who don't just know women's skin, they know how to formulate for it. Rodan & Fields. Love what you see. Tap the banner or visit rodanandfields.com/Spotify to get your exclusive welcome offer.
This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We're back. This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party and our very special guest, Colonel Tony Shaffer, renowned intelligence officer, served this country honorably and well, and we're lucky to have him on. He's been a previous guest, and we always love Tony's insight. At the break, you told an interesting story about how Trump gave the order to go in to General Danforth, and you were the guy who delivered that message?
Yes.
God bless
and
you.
And that was the idea, is just to go win. The military knows how to win, Richard. It's not the military.
No, it's the politicians.
It's
the politicians who screw up the efforts. I get it. So talking about things that are totally screwed up and we seem to have no understanding of the exposure we have, the dangers we have, and we're not really responding as far as I can tell, Tony. And this was an article I just saw in the Wall Street Journal. It was the lead article in, I guess it was Tuesday's Wall Street Journal of this week, talking about the Chinese espionage activities in the United States. Could you address yourself to that, please?
So this goes back to actually in the 80s. As a very young lieutenant, Richard, I was assigned to do counter surveillance in Washington, watching the Chinese go to our conferences and collect all this intelligence. The Chinese, because of their system of communism, do not inherently stimulate original thinking or invention. So they have to steal that stuff. They've been doing it effectively for a long time. Bill Gertz did a book called Betrayal, where the Clinton administration turned over all sorts of sensitive technology to allow the Chinese to move their nuclear weapons program forward to have what we call MIRVs, multiple independent reentry vehicles, which increase their ability to fight us. This has been going on and on. The Chinese have been sending.
Why would the Clinton administration have done that?
Profit. A lot of big corporations made money off that for whatever reason, and the Clinton administration. Well, again, there's a full disclosure of everything that happened in Bill Gertz's book, Betrayal, and I think it was because of the same attitude Joe Biden has, is that China's a minor power. They really can't compete with us. That's been the general attitude of the Democrat Party. Why I think we've had so many problems, even now. And then the Chinese intelligence service has continued to be effective in creating all sorts of collection efforts. A little-known fact is many of the Chinese restaurants we have here in the United States are actually Chinese intelligence centers where they have operatives going out doing operative-type things. And it's been compounding. It's been getting worse. And at this point, the Chinese have been very effective in stealing technology, understanding how we would fight, and they're trying right now very hard to increase their Navy to eclipse our Navy, as well as create new technologies which would defeat our ability to stop them. Things like hypersonic missiles and fourth generation, fifth generation aircraft that can actually be very effective in penetrating our defense measures and on our fleet. And this is the situation we're now faced with, is this benign neglect of understanding that China is our enemy.
Tony, what Jesse and I have been very concerned about, and we've talked about this previously, and we want to get your thoughts on this. Why in God's name are we allowing the Chinese, directly or indirectly through surrogates or through companies that they influence, to buy up our land, particularly land near the military bases? What is that about?
Well, that's exactly what it appears to be. Look, they opened Lourdes Communications, the intercept station in Cuba. They've done other things to create persistent surveillance near military installations, Richard. And, yeah, I think at a time of their choosing, if we go to war, we're going to have huge problems with China actually doing acts of sabotage within the homeland, because they're doing all this. They're buying these things. There was recently a bioweapons lab they found in California where it was purchased by the Chinese. I think the Chinese were tipped off that they were being looked at. They abandoned it. They went in there and found all sorts of things which indicated that they were trying to create biological weapons, Richard, that would be released on our soil. They don't want to have to do it in China because obviously we saw what happened with Wuhan. But I think we have neglected to the point of where if the Chinese go to war, that is to say they go after Taiwan, we're going to have huge problems within the continental United States. of the Chinese having their folks do acts of sabotage against our military installations. That's why I think they want that land.
Jesse.
Yeah, Anthony, Tony, I'm sorry. We've talked about this, that it goes even beyond. I mean, I didn't know about the Chinese, restaurant to know that, but now as you said it, I'm like, how could we not be? But it goes, right. I don't understand where things happen right in front of our faces, right in front of the face of the U.S. government, that we don't take action. I was made aware and read that the Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, that there's a cluster of cell phone towers owned by a Chinese technology and cell phone company that's used for intelligence gathering. It's a Highway, I believe I'm pronouncing it right, Highway, the Chinese company, and we take no action. They've been doing these land purchases on and around our military bases, around the National Arboretum in Washington, D.C., and we have speculated that it's their intelligence gathering facility. And then we've had these little Chinese police departments in different communities where they police, members, Chinese residents of the United States. How is this? I mean, I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I'm not a lawyer in general at all, but I try to play one on radio when the judge allows me. But
and you do a good job. You do a good job.
How can the United States not take action to prevent overt actions such as these land purchases, such as the placement of cell towers or the acquisition of cell towers near critical or any military bases in the homeland, or operate these little their own personal police departments?
It goes back to our original discussion point of political will. Jesse, all these things did not occur during the Cold War. The Russians had similar strategies, but we were able to shut them down. We actually, the Army, as I worked on this, had something called the OPSEC program, the Operational Security Program, where we actually had people, uniformed members like myself, out looking at our profile and trying to figure out how the Russians are trying to spy on us and shut it down every time. We're not doing that against the Chinese, and I would argue the Chinese are as great, if not a greater threat at this point, because they, unlike the Russians, have the ability to kind of hobble the entire global economy and reshape it in what they want. And that's what they want. That's what they're trying to do. They stated this. They stated they have a plan to essentially gain a complete influence over the Pacific Rim and then eventually the globe. And we know this. And so it is a political decision to not allow the intelligence and security elements of the United States government to shut this down. And since they're foreign nationals, Jesse, they don't have rights. These are things that we could choose to say, and I think members of Congress should wake up and actually apply legal law, establish laws to this to support it, to say we will not allow foreign nations to gain economic or physical access to facilities which we deem as militarily sensitive. We could do that, but we just have chosen not to do it.
Let me switch gears, gentlemen.
Sure.
The Biden administration seems to have an absolute obsession with renewing an Iran nuclear deal.
Oh.
And to my mind, this is absolute insanity. They've already shown that when you give them billions of dollars, what do they use it for? Not for helping the Iranian people, but in fact to fund terrorism. And it's been called, Iran's been called, the most dangerous center from a nation state of terrorism. And yet we keep doing it. The state-sponsored terrorism from the Iranians. Why doesn't it get better? And why do we ever believe that we're going to be able to curtail their nuclear development? Because it's always, they're lying, they're misrepresenting, they make promises. They play a much better game than we do. We seem to be totally naive. Reagan famously said, trust but verify. I say we can't trust these people at all, and they're making it impossible to verify, especially when you have these people like Kerry and Biden and Obama who just seem to think that everything will be just fine. It's not going to be just fine because this axis of evil that Jesse and I have been talking about, which clearly Iran is a member of, is a real clear and present danger to us. What do you say about that, Tony?
So this goes back to Zbigniew Brzezinski in the Carter years. The Democrats, for whatever reason, have had this idea that we should warm up to the Iranians over the Saudis, which Saudis have been our ally, for better or for worse, for a long time. And this has been kind of the trend. And so anytime, Richard, they can benefit the Iranians, they do, even though they know that they're a very totalitarian theocracy, which murders their citizens, and yet they want to do this. The nuclear deal is an extension of the Obama belief that they want to have a win on the table. That's what the whole joint agreed-upon framework was all about, is having a win. And they're naive or purposely looking the other way, because that money we give them, some of that goes to the North Koreans we just mentioned earlier. North Korea has continued to do the research necessary for the Iranians to be able to have weapons to use on call. So, yeah, the Iranians may not be doing the research, but that money we give them gives them the ability to outsource their research. That's what they're doing. And to your point, the acts of terror which the IRGC engages in is a threat to the Middle East stability. Nobody wants to see a nuclear arms race, but that's what they're trying to do. Right now, as we speak, the Saudis have already bought their nuclear weapons. They're sitting in a warehouse in Rawalpindi in Pakistan. So the moment, Richard, the Iranians have confirmed nuclear weapons, the Saudis are going to take delivery of their weapons, and we have the potential for a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, which, again, no one would benefit from.
And what is Israel supposed to do about all of this?
Well, the Israelis will be caught in the middle. I think that's why the Israelis, are rightfully trying to work with us to try to bring back some form of the Abraham Accords, which was helping to actually do long-term economic relations in the Middle East to help bring the Sunni elements the Shia elements, which are the Saudis, in line with the Israelis to create a defensive sphere. And I think that's what we should continue to do. The Abraham Accords were brilliant. They were working. And again, that's another thing that was abandoned by the Biden administration in interest of going back and trying to recreate the joint agreed-upon nuclear framework, which I think is just a hardened path to guarantee the Iranians get nuclear weapons, and it's not in our interest to support it.
Jesse.
Yeah, this is one of those most disturbing parts of this obsession with Iran that's now covered over two administrations, but also these little side deals that are going there, trading or releasing billions of dollars for those people that are being held unfairly in Tehran, which I believe the next deal that's on the table is about the release of $6 billion in Tehran's assets that would actually be helpful to them, because I think Tehran is a little bit weakened right now. And in fact, Kylie Gilbert, who was a British and Australian descent, recently was released from Tehran. She said that would only incentivize Tehran. So you see these two plans moving forward, and it just seems that, I guess for myself, I'm a layman, I'm not as learned as yourself, and didn't run black ops like you did. But from my kitchen table, I'm seeing that Iran is playing every side to release their funds because of their need for it, and we're playing right into it.
We are. And then to your point, these nations have figured out they can grab U.S. citizens and hold them for hostage for gain. The Russians have done it. The Iranians are doing it. And the Biden administration is playing right into it. Again, it's political will, Jesse. This administration is endangering U.S. citizens and our interests by the fact that, they're trying to return to a deal that the Iranians know will result in a nuclear weapon. Our allies, the Saudis, the Israelis all know it's not a good idea, and yet they go against it. And that's why, by the way, that's why the Saudis won't deal with Biden, because they don't trust Biden, because they see Biden doing exactly what you just outlined. So, again, to me, there's a practical way of doing foreign policy. This administration has decided that their interests, which go against the interests of the American people, are more important than global stability and peace. And I think they are endangering peace in the Middle East by doing what they're doing.
Well, Colonel Tony Shaffer, Jesse and I want to thank you very, very much for coming on Let the Record Show. Your observations, your analysis, your concerns are very troubling, but I think it's time that the American people wake up to the realities that we're facing. And the fact of the matter is, it's not just the American people have to wake up, it's our leadership in Washington. My problem is I have no confidence the Biden administration is capable of liberating itself from these mind locks that they're in. They're going to keep namby-pambering, dealing with the Ukraine, and you correctly point out there's no demonstration of a will or strategy to win in the Ukraine. Again, they haven't confronted the espionage aspects, the infiltrations of our think tanks and our academic centers by the Chinese and stealing of our technology. We're obsessed with this green energy, which gives all the resources and the ability, because the Chinese will control the batteries and the natural resources. As Jesse has pointed out numerous times, we gave up the base in Afghanistan, which is a total disaster, and that doesn't work well for us. And the Iran nuclear deal. These are very troubling matters, and the Biden administration has screwed up every one of those. We're in a much more weakened position than we are in my lifetime, facing adversaries who are dedicated to our destruction, who have a unity of will to destroy us. And I'm troubled. And voices like yours in the London Center speaking out for common sense approaches and a recognition of the threats is absolutely essential. And our leaders in Washington better wake up before it's too late. Jesse, last thoughts on this before we sign off the segment?
No, I completely agree. And Colonel Schaefer, I want to truly thank you for your service to our country, your continued service to our country, and the insight you've given our listeners and the education you've given us, because this is troubling. We wanted to talk about the Monroe Doctrine. We even didn't get a chance to do that. But we're hoping that you can join us back, because the Biden administration, and dating back to the Kerry, was trying to kill the Monroe Doctrine, and that's something that's kept us safe. And I think our listeners would be, especially with real-time situations going on right now, would be interested in learning about that.
So thank you very much, Jesse, and thank you very much, Richard. Look, my comments are nonpartisan. We are all Americans first, and that's my concern. I took the oath to protect the United States and the citizens, and I'd like to believe that's what our focus should be. So thank you for having me.
Colonel Schaefer, God bless you. Thank you for your service, and God bless our beloved country. We're taking a break. This is Let the Record Show. We've just had Colonel Tony Schaefer with us. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Chairman Garcia and I will be back in a moment with more interesting conversation on Let the Record Show. Please stay tuned.
And now, two pigeons bemoaning the fact you can choose the TV you want with DirecTV.
So now they can pick out their favorite entertainment when they sign up and save money?
You mean if you like sports?
You can get a sports pack.
What about entertainment?
Entertainment pack.
It's like finding an old pizza with your favorite toppings, which for me would be pineapple and toenails.
Pineapple?
Pay for the TV you want, not the TV you don't. Genre pack starting at $34.99 a month. Visit DirecTV.com for more information. New residential customers only. Local channels vary by market. Services renew monthly unless you cancel online. Credit card required. Restrictions apply.
Click fast and save big. Shop Blinds.com's Spring Cyber Monday sale and elevate your space with new custom window treatments today. DIY or let our pros handle everything from measure to install. Blinds.com makes upgrading your home easy with free virtual consultations, honest pricing, and free samples delivered to your door. Shop confidently with our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Hurry to Blinds.com's Spring Cyber Monday sale now. Save up to 45% with minimum purchase plus a free measure. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. We've just had two very interesting segments with Colonel Tony Schaefer, the head of the London Center, which is a think tank involved in national security and foreign policy issues, common sense concerns that we need to protect and defend our country against the threats that are both external and internal. I want to switch gears, Jesse, and there are three different topics I want to talk about in this segment. And if we have to roll into the fourth one on it, we can do that as well. But there are three things I want to talk about. First one is double standards in American justice, the Trump investigations and prosecutions. Then I want to talk about the double standards in American justice, the Biden family influence peddling and document retention investigations and prosecutions. Then the third double standard I want to talk about in American politics and government is Senator McConnell. You know, they keep saying he has to resign because of his alleged infirmities. Yet Biden and Feinstein and Fetterman get a pass by the same people who are going after Senator McConnell. So let's begin with the double standards of American justice, the Trump investigations, and prosecutions. Why don't you begin?
I just think that we've detailed that there is a double standard under this administration, the Biden administration, and the Democratic Party and their progressive cronies to bring that to here in the United States. And the difference between the Biden family influence peddling and Trump is stark. And, you know, we've been talking about this in terms of presidential elections and such, but I still want to boil it down to how it affects you and I, the average U.S. citizen, the average American citizen, Main Street businesses. And I'm not, my issue is not here with line investigators, but with the career political leadership of the Department of Justice and the FBI. You know, there is no doubt that there was in my opinion, there was a coordination of indictments going on. Alvin Bragg in New York City, the January 6th indictment, the presidential papers indictment, and the Georgia paper, and the Georgia
alleged election interference.
Alleged. All of these are alleged. And the reason I say this is because you've served on the bench. We've also been partners. We've seen how prosecutors do this. You know, the timing of when these were rolled out in a coordinated fashion on the eve of the 24 election, for me and for many in America, demonstrate that this is a coordinated attack to prevent Donald Trump from seeking the presidency once again. And the reason why this is important is because, number one, the January 6th investigation and indictment is shoddy. Legal experts are saying that has not worked the paper it's on. The Breda Mar-a-Lago and the presidential papers, the prosecutor is being assailed by the judge down in Florida during that case. And we move forward with, of course, the Bragg investigation is simply a fine, and the Georgia investigation, I think, is overreach, and we are getting more information on that. But what's important to us is that if these political elitists are allowed to have one set of rules for their political opponents and another set of rules for themselves, the American people are next. There's a reason why, you know, they've already started dropping the points on markers on the board by calling those people who dissent and question school boards. They call them domestic terrorists. The Department of Justice. They have hired new 87. They're planning to hire 87 new IRS agents to go after taxpayers, average Americans, Main Street businesses. That's why it's important to watch and to fight this double standard that's going on right now. All the while, as we watch, the Biden administration and the Biden family, they get a sweetheart deal that by the grace of God, a learned judge unraveled in Delaware to prevent this from moving forward and immunity being given forward. We've seen whistleblowers, not partisans, whistleblowers, employees, line employees of the IRS demonstrate that this is how they've been impeded in their investigations. You know, we have to remember that there is a deep state of leadership positions hidden in our FBI and our Department of Justice. The same group that when the tip of the iceberg of these influence peddling cases in the Biden administration was censored, and buried in 2020 with the discovery of the Hunter Biden laptop. They did it with coordination of the Department of Justice, the FBI, and big woke progressive tech companies to make sure that was election interference. And I say to you, Your Honor, you know, we have seen the Department of Justice make arrests years after the January 6th, Capitol incursions and such. We've seen many of those arrests. They've used facial recognition. They've done interviews. They've done investigations. There's not been one arrest based on the looting, the rioting, the destruction of property in the riots of 2020 in Minnesota, in New York, in Portland, in the major cities, Chicago. Never once. There has been no follow-up investigations, no follow-up arrests there. That right there demonstrates to you that there's a double standard in American justice, in my opinion. It goes from the Trump and the Bidens. It goes to those Americans who They did wrong by storming the Capitol. They did wrong by storming the Capitol. But if they're going to be arrested, people who destroyed properties, looted properties, continue to do smash and bang burglaries should be arrested and incarcerated, yet they do nothing. And after they get done with being successful, if they can be, with Trump, the American people and Main Street businesses are next.
Well, I'll tell you this. My view, having read all these indictments and these cases, I think they all are very marginal cases at best, and that's giving them the benefit of the doubt. They're politically motivated. It's a dangerous phenomenon because they've weaponized, as you know, I've talked about, the criminal justice system to go after political opponents. And that's shocking. That's absolutely awful. From day one, they've been going after, and I'm no fan of Donald Trump, the man, because as I often say, he has an unfortunate personality, but as a president, I think he's a very good president, and he doesn't deserve this, and the American people don't deserve this, because this attempt to weaponize, and it's been successful, the criminal justice system undermines the integrity of our democracy. Two, they've turned a blind eye to the influence peddling by the Biden family. Please tell me what this young man contributed to any of the deals where he got tens and maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars of deals that's now being unraveled by the House Republican chairs in the Ways and Means Committee, the Oversight Committee, and Judiciary Committee. And nobody's paying attention to that, and that in itself, as you point out, is a double standard because they've using the media to suppress that knowledge, just like the laptop was suppressed. And you're right. If you want to talk about election interference, it wasn't about stuffing ballot boxes. It was about suppressing the possible corruption by the Biden family using the son, Hunter, and the brother, Jim, in influence peddling by suppressing that laptop, that whole expose by the New York Post and Miranda Devine, because that could have turned the election differently. That would, it was maybe 40 or 50,000 votes in a half a dozen states that would have made the difference in the election. And if that information had gotten out, you might have had a different result, and Trump might still have been president. And that's a real problem. And the idea now that Weiss, who's the U.S. attorney in Delaware, has been appointed as a special counsel by Garland's a total joke because he's totally investigating himself and the role of his U.S. attorney's office in giving a sweetheart deal. And the only reason they were going to dismiss the whole case, Jesse. The only reason they gave him a sweetheart deal is because the IRS agents were called in and interviewed by the Justice Department, and they knew that they were about to have these whistleblowers speak the truth, so they wanted to show they're doing something, so they offered the sweetheart deal with misdemeanors. If you and I did what he did, we would have been prosecuted under felonies. They deliberately allowed the statute of limitations to run. They could have gotten a waiver of the statute of limitations. They didn't ask for it, even though the defense counsel was willing to give it. They could have indicted. They didn't. That would have told the statute of limitations. It's absolutely outrageous. And there's no doubt, and the National Archives has 5,400 documents, which is very likely to show that the Vice President of the United States at the time, Joe Biden, was sending secret messages using phony names to his son involving business deals. We have to see what happens with that. And if that truth comes out, we need to know what that was. And what, by the way, what were they being paid for? They weren't being paid because they liked the way they dress. They were getting something out of it. And we need to know what that is. Kevin has given us the sign. We'll be taking a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us for our final segment for more interesting conversation.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
This is Let the Record Show. This is the final segment of this week's show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse, I want to talk to you about the double standards of American politics and government. And I'm talking about Senator McConnell, who's minority leader of the United States Senate, heads the Republican caucus in the United States Senate, who is the longest-serving leader of a party in the Senate history and is universally regarded, whether you like him or you don't like him, as one of the most effective and able leaders in Senate history. And he's had a couple of instances where he's had moments where he's froze. The doctors who've examined said he didn't have a stroke, which is good news, and God bless him, because I've met Senator McConnell on a number of occasions and had the opportunity to chat with him. And I think we're lucky to have a man of his brilliance and patriotism in a position of leadership. So now they're rallying around and saying, "Oh, let's get rid of McConnell. He should resign from the Senate." And that's nice because you have a Democratic governor who would not honor the unwritten rule, which is if McConnell would resign, who's going to be succeeding him by appointment of the governor? Generally, what you do is you appoint somebody who's either a neutral or from the same political party. But this governor, who's up for re-election, is absolutely refusing to make that commitment. He'll probably appoint another left-wing Democrat. So you're bolstering the Democratic majority in the Senate, which is very dangerous. So then we have a weakened two-party system. But if you want to talk about people resigning, let's start at the very top. McConnell's in far better shape than Joe Biden. He knows what's going on. He's an effective leader. You can't say that about Joe Biden. And if you want to give a pass to Joe Biden, because after all, he's politically exempt because he's the president of the United States, take a real hard look at Feinstein in California and Fetterman in Pennsylvania. Neither one of them is capable of carrying out their offices, and yet that's two of the 51 majority that Democrats hold in the United States Senate, and neither one of them is able to do their jobs. They're run by their staff. In Fetterman's case, run by the staff and his wife, and Feinstein by her staff. What say you?
First of all, I have the utmost respect for Senator McConnell. While many Americans, and even, we don't agree on every tactic that he has done as a Republican leader of that Senate caucus, but I will be, as an American and as a Republican leader, ever grateful for him utilizing the tools of the Senate to prevent Merrick Garland from ascending to the Supreme Court. The Attorney General now, Garland, has been exposed as being what he is, an empty suit and a partisan. And we do not need that in the Supreme Court. But you're right. But let's go back to the beginning, Your Honor. 2020, Joe Biden campaigned from a basement. In 2022, Senator Fetterman was campaigning from a hospital bed and was protected by the mainstream and media on his health conditions. In fact, they probed nothing of his health conditions, despite the fact they've done the same. They're doing the opposite with Senator McConnell. They did it with Donald Trump and Republicans. I'm not even going to get into Kamala Harris because no one knows exactly what's going to come out of her mouth or if they can understand her in general. But one of the things that we have here is that, a bipartisan survey conducted by the Associated Press and NORC has found that 77% of Americans believe that Biden is too old. And while only 51% believe that Trump is too old, there's only 3 years difference between these two men. Yet there is a valley as big as it can be in the differences in the vitality of these two individuals. I give Mitch McConnell a lot of credit, and Americans should also. Mitch McConnell runs, directs the Republican conference. Good, bad, you agree with it, their policies or not. He runs that Republican conference. He sets the tone as a leader. We cannot say the same about Joe Biden. We cannot say the same about Joe Biden. We don't know who's actually running the country under Joe Biden. And this is not an ageism thing. We have Senator Grassley, a Republican, 89 years old. He jogs with regularly. He challenges onlookers and everyone else and detractors to push-up contests. And I don't agree with her politics one bit. But Nancy Pelosi, she still leaves reporters in the dust, and she leaves those people in the dust. This is not an ageism thing. This is more about mental acuity. And I think that's the problem. I'm glad that Senator McConnell is fine. I believe it's two-faced. It is a double standard. If a Republican has an issue that may or may not be, and it's private under HIPAA laws, and maybe as a result of a concussion he suffered in the last several months, it could be. But at least they're being McConnell's being honest about it, releasing records. The same can't be said about the Biden administration, Feinstein and company. I mean, Feinstein has health proxies to take care of, to be able to make decisions for her. You know, it's wrong to force these individuals to maintain their positions just so the woke, progressive political bloc can retain power. That is wrong. It should be what's good for the country, what's good for the Senate, what's good for the institutions of government. But for the Democrats, it's not about that. It's about influence. It's about elections. It's about power. It's about having the United States be more embedded in the average citizen's life than they should be.
Well said, Jesse. I want to turn our attention to something that's deeply troubling to me, and that's the new argument that they're trying to use against Trump as a candidate for the presidency of the United States. The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, Section 3, says that there's this qualification that if you engage in rebellion or insurrection against the United States, you're disqualified from holding office. And that hasn't been used since the 1870s, and that was the purpose. That was to go after the Confederate office holders and military people who waged war against the Union. And that was the purpose of it. It was not a purpose to go after your political enemies. The 14th Amendment, Section 3, would be a dangerous phenomena if used today against Trump. Because the way they want to use it is they won't say, well, you have to be convicted of insurrection or rebellion. The mere making of the allegation that you engaged in rebellion or insurrection. And by the way, Trump has never been charged with insurrection or rebellion. So there's never been a charge. There have been newspaper allegations and political allegations against him that he did so, but that's just talking points. That's just a narrative. He's never been convicted of that. Yet the Democratic Party, through people who are supposed to be reputable constitutional law people like Professor Lawrence Tribe of Harvard Law School, has said the allegation is enough. A Secretary of State at any given state can say that Trump engaged in an insurrection and therefore deny him the right to be on the ballot. Well, Alan Dershowitz, another professor at Harvard Law School, takes a contrary position. He says Tribe is absolutely wrong about his constitutional history, about the application, and he correctly points out, and Dershowitz and I talked about this on Katz and Cosby together, you have two fundamental constitutional violations, Jesse. Number one, this is not a self-actuating clause. Where's the due process? Who said that the Secretary of State can deny somebody from being on the ballot based on this 14th Amendment Section 3 provision? And how do you contest this, and where's the due process to go point, counterpoint to show that you weren't part of a insurrection or rebellion? And in fact, it seems to me, in terms of due process, all the burdens of production and persuasion has to be on the parties saying the allegation that you engaged in rebellion or insurrection. It's not for somebody to defend himself, say, well, I didn't, and this is why I didn't. It's the other way around. And there's no vehicle to have that kind of challenge, and therefore there's no due process constitutionally. So that's a defect. Secondly, Jesse, you and I have the right to vote for the candidates of our choice. A Secretary of State of Rhode Island has no right to say to the people of Rhode Island, in a Democratic state, well, let's deny access. Let's deny access to the ballot to Trump, and therefore all those people who want to vote for Trump in Rhode Island are denied the right to vote. We have a constitutional right to vote for the candidates of our choice. Last word on this, because Kevin has given us that sign, and the hook is out. I can see that hook raising up.
My last word on this is, do you see the irony that I do that Tim Kaine, who was part of the slate in 2016 that was like smacked all over the place by Trump and Pence, is the one that I guess needs to come out of hiding since his defeat? You know, this is ludicrous. These are nothing more than political talking points. It truly does demonstrate the Democrats' fear of Trump or a strong Republican being on the ballot. They are so concerned over their failed record, their embrace of the woke progressive agenda, that they know that the average American is going to rise up and forward another revolution, this one at the ballot box again, to set this country back on the right pattern. They're scared of Trump. They're scared of what Trump represents. They're scared of the America First policies. They're scared of the policies that make Trump popular, despite the fact that people may not like the way he tweets. This is nothing more than political grandstanding, and it comes from someone who really is an inconsequential member of Congress that hasn't been heard of in about 5, 8, 6 years.
Jesse, we have that sign from Kevin. I want to thank you once again for a wonderful discussion. We were fortunate to have Colonel Schaefer with us. This has been Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Justin, I want to thank you for listening, and we look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show. God bless you. Keep your family safe, and God bless our beloved country.